Welcome again. Tensions have escalated over disputed islands in the East China Sea. America says it flew two B-52 bombers through a new controversial Chinese air defense zone in the area. The aircraft were on what's being described as a regular training mission by America, but the Americans say they didn't inform Chinese authorities. The islands known as Senkaku in Japan and Diaoyu in China are a source of rising tension between the two nations.
These peaceful islands in the East China Sea have long been a source of rising tension. They're controlled by Japan, which calls them the Senkaku Islands, but claimed by China, which calls them the Diaoyu. So it was a contentious move for Beijing to announce a new air defense zone covering the airspace above them. On Saturday, it released this set of rules. It said all aircraft in the zone must report a flight plan, maintain two-way radio communications, and respond to identification inquiries. It also warned that the armed forces will take defensive measures if aircraft don't comply. China sees these actions as its right.
It's indeed the right of every country to defend its airspace and also to make sure that its territorial integrity, its sovereignty are safeguarded. This is a normal arrangement.
But that isn't how the United States sees it.
This unilateral action appears to be an attempt to unilaterally change the status quo in the East China Sea. This will raise regional tensions and increase the risk of miscalculation, confrontation, and accidents.
And it wasn't long before the United States made clear that it's rejecting the new rules. Two unarmed B-52s took off from Guam and flew right through the air defense zone. The zone covers most of the East China Sea and includes the disputed islands. The Pentagon says China was not informed about the flights and the planes weren't contacted by Chinese aircraft. It says this was a regular training flight, a normal mission rather than an act of provocation.
It's not just the US that has little time for these new rules. Japan, Taiwan and South Korea will not comply. Singapore Airlines and Australia's Qantas have both said they will, but Australia has complained about the zone to the Chinese ambassador. All of this is more than just a squabble over flight rules. Washington is used to being the dominant military power in the region, and it's watching China's military build-up and its arguments with its neighbours with alarm. Emily Thomas, BBC News.
So let's find out what is truly going on there. Joining me from Washington now is Douglas Pal, a former National Security Advisor on Asian Affairs, who is now Vice President for Studies at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. Douglas, thank you very much for joining us. Welcome to Newsday.
Thank you.
Is this an act of provocation or just, as the Americans are putting it, normal military procedure?
Well, the American exercise is normal military procedure, but that's been put into a new context by Saturday's announcement of the new air defense intercept zone. The United States obviously consulted widely within its own government and with the Japanese before it did this, but it was originally planned to take place at this time in this way, and they saw no reason to change it because of the Chinese announcement, in effect saying to the Chinese, we do not respect the zone that you've created.
And what do you think that does in terms of, because we know how heightened the situation is, particularly in this area over the disputed islands. America now doing this right now, I mean, what is your assessment of that picture as it unfolds?
Well, it's telling the Japanese that our alliance is operative, that the United States is not going to be divided from Japan in the mutual security treaties, obligations of the United States and Japan to defend each other where Japan administers territories. Now, there's a nuance that the United States does not recognize that Japan has ultimate sovereignty on this island, nor does it say Japan does not. But it's has always said it will defend those territories administered by Japan, and these islands have been administered by Japan since 1895, with the exception of a period after the war when the United States was in charge of them.
You see, that nuance, Douglas, that you just pointed to is quite something, isn't it? Because although America is saying that, we're not quite saying that this is Japanese territory here, but, we're happy to back them if they're going to administer these islands. I mean, this is all very murky waters, isn't it?
It is. I think maybe the Chinese have among their objectives in declaring their air defense intercept zone that they could find a way to divide the United States and Japan. And the United States government considers it very important not to let that happen.
OK, well, we haven't had a reaction from China yet on this. No statement has been released from them. But I'm keen to see from you, Douglas, with your years of expertise, particularly on Asian affairs, how you see this playing out. And I know it's a bit like a crystal ball question, but what do you understand the situation to be and how it might go within the next year?
Well, there are different views. I mean, the hawks in the United States have all been charged up because they see China being aggressive. I see a China which thought it was responding to Japanese actions in the islands and came up with what proved to be too strong a reaction. And now they're going to have to manage the unintended consequences of alarming most of their neighbors over this air defense zone. And the first one that has to be appeased is the Korean government, which was, I think, judging from Chinese behavior, inadvertently included in this zone so that there's an overlap not just with Japan, with whom China has an argument, but also with Korea, with whom China does not have an argument, and in fact, with whom relations have been improving. There's something not quite right about this. I hope we can give the Chinese, strong messages that the alliance continues, that the United States will be firm in defending its rights as well as Japan's rights, but at the same time, give China some chance to step back from this confrontational posture.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what their reaction is to these latest developments. Douglas, we appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining us. Douglas Powell there.